Okay, I think this is week 9 of GH. So essentially, monozygote, these are two equations, but before we get there, we're going to talk about twins, yeah? So monozygote twins are known as identical twins. They originate from a single fertilized egg, which is called the zygote. This is going to be splitting into two embryos, and then your zygotic twins, also known as fraternal twins, are going to develop from two separate eggs fertilized by two different sperm cells, right? So your dizygotic twins, they're going to have 100% the same environment, but really they're only going to have 50% of the same genes. Versus your monozygote twins are going to have 100% of the genes because they're coming from a one single fertilized egg that's split, and then they're going to have 100% of the same environment. So now that we know all those things, right, we're gonna talk a little bit about polygenic and multifactorial traits. All this means is that you can have multiple genes, multiple factors that contribute to that trait. You have different types of variants. There's additive variants, dominance variants, epistatic variants. Lucas knows to do a great job explaining those three components of genetic variants. I definitely know those in the equation for that. It's quite easy. Just genetic variance is just the adding of all of those three. It's really not that bad. So essentially now we're gonna come to the equations, right? So this is the idea of heritability. And heritability is how much of the phenotype is due to genetic variation. That's the definition. But really all it means is how much of what we see as the trait, how much of that is due to genetics and not the environment. So how much of that was passed on, right? And so essentially that's our H squared. So if we figure out the difference between monozygote twins minus dizygote twins, because we know the environment is the same, but in dizygote twins, the genes are only 50% shared, essentially we can subtract the correlation of coefficients from these two, multiply them by 2, and you're going to get heritability and you get like a number. So you get like 75%, right? And that just means that 75% of that variation was essentially due to genes and not the environment. So these calculations are kind of just done in like researchy type of things. But again, they can still be asked because a lot of pre-clin stuff is like the foundation for clinical work and things of that nature. So that's why it may seem a little out of place, but I assure you it's really important. And again, super high yield, both of these. Then you're gonna have the breeder's equation. And so, like the name suggests, this is just for figuring out heritability when it comes to breeding. So let's say the mean population of cows is like 520 kilograms, right? And the selected parents were 540 kilograms, and the offspring of those parents were, let's say, 535 kilograms. That is quite realistic too. There's another thing, which is how if your parents are like really outliers from the mean, even with height, your kids are actually more likely to be closer to the mean. And actually, it's a calculation that you need to know. It's in one of the GLSs about height and how you can calculate your height. I think it was like the mean of the two parents plus 6 centimeters from memory. It was something like that, but double check the number. That's also quite important. But anyway, going back to the breeder's equation. So essentially, you're going to have R divided by S, and you're going to have H squared, which is your heritability, right? Your S is essentially the difference of the parents to the population. So you're going to put the parents kilogram here. So let's say 540 kilogram for the cow minus a mean of 520. And then the R is essentially just the offspring's difference to the population. So offspring were 535 minus 520. This ends up being 15. This ends up being 20 right here. So A squared equals R divided by S. You got 0.75. What does that number mean? Essentially it just means that there's a 75% chance that the genetic variance that we're seeing is essentially I'm going to double check that I get it right, is essentially to genetic variation. So the reason why we're seeing this difference in the kids to the parents is 75% due to the genes, 25% due to the environment. Other than that, there isn't really much else for this week. Obviously, lecture is super important. I'd go to it for every week. But that's like the big things.